Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Discovery Pod with Eve. I am Eve Richards. We've got a very exciting show today, so please make sure you watch this episode on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel, or you could listen to us on your favorite podcast. I am so excited to be hosting this episode with the one and only Tyrone DuBose. Tyrone is a voice actor. He's an actor. He's a radio.
What says happiness better than me? That's what I say.
Wow.
Until my kids are upset with me, then it's a whole nother matter.
Oh,
But I
welcome,
digress.
Tyrone. It's so good to have you back.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. But more importantly, I am honored to be here with Miss Melanie Marlo. And Melanie not only builds mansions, she flips them and sells them. This is my all-time favorite friend right here, forever. Not that I'm going to ever be able to afford one, but nonetheless.
Aim high.
They aim high. That's right. Thank you. Melanie, thank you so much for being here. We really are honored to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. And gosh, how difficult to follow that lovely deep voice.
I know,
I'll do my
right?
best. I'll do my best British for you. Thank you for having me.
So, obviously, you showcased your $25 million Bel-Air mansion on Selling Sunset and $1 million list in Los Angeles. Tell us about that special property.
Well, when you say it out loud, I still have a pinch me moment because I come from very humble beginnings, and on the outside looking in, I still go, how did I get here?
Wow.
I was not meant to be here. You know, I was born in the north of England, and I just knew that that was not where I wanted to stay. And so I broke free and moved here, and the shows sort of fell in my lap, both of them. It was quite funny. So if we start with $1 million listing, I was throwing a birthday party for my son at that property, and a guest there said, "Oh, well, my friend's on the team with Tracy." And then literally as I was leaving to go to England for the summer, she FaceTimed me and said, "Can you be on the show?" And it fell in my lap. And then the same thing happened with Selling Sunset. Now, I have a bit of a spoiler alert for you, because they've just called me and said, will I be on this season as well of Selling Sunset? And nobody knows that.
Wow.
So there you go. There's an exclusive for you.
All right.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell us, I'm sorry, just a real quick question. What you said that you weren't sure or you knew that wasn't where you wanted to be. Where did you believe that you were going to go if you didn't believe you were going to be there?
You know, I apparently said to my mother at 9 years old, you know, Mummy, don't teach me to cook or clean because I won't do that. That should never have been in my vocabulary. You know, my father was a silversmith and my mother worked 2 jobs. I don't know where it came from. Wow. I just knew it was innate inside of me. And I was very fortunate to travel when I was modelling. And so I knew that there was a whole nother world out there. And then one summer, a friend of mine who was also a model, we used to model together, she flew out for a modelling job and she invited me over. I can't explain exactly the feeling, but I remember being on the plane, looking down on Los Angeles as we were landing, and I went, this feels like home. And it was the strangest sensation. I can't explain it, but it was that moment of looking down and just saying, this feels like home. And it became my home.
Wow. That's incredible. So take us back to the days that you were modeling and you lived in Italy, correct?
No. I lived in England when I was modelling. I moved to Italy when I met my son's father.
Oh.
And I did live in Italy for about 6 years.
Okay.
And solo parla pochino italiano, solo pochino. Ma it was a very good experience. It wasn't quite a fit for me in Italy. It was quite sleepy. But it is where I started the thought of what is now my successful career. I was I was a housewife and I didn't know what to do. But I knew I needed to do something. I was incredibly bored. As you know, even to this day, Italy closes every afternoon for siestas.
Siesta, yep.
Sundays are closed. I mean, it was just a lot of sleepy time, and I'm not a sleepy person. And so we weren't quite a fit, that country and I, as far as living. Beautiful to visit and holiday. But I did say, I need to do something. And I was asked, what would you like to do? And I said, I want to renovate houses.
Wow.
And in Italy, in those days, the real estate agents' windows did not have photographs of the houses in the window. They had floor plans, which I thought was really weird. I was like, what do these houses look like? I'm an aesthetics person. I want to see what it looks like. That was how they did it in Italy. And I realised it's because in Italy, they don't, in those days, again, I'm going back a few years, they don't sell houses, they pass them down to the generations. Now when I go to Italy to visit, you will see photographs of the houses in the window, but in those days you didn't. So I had a splendid idea that I would fly to England to renovate houses, and that's what I did in the north of England.
Tell us about the culture change from you going to almost 3 different places where you started in England, you then went to Italy, now you're here in the United States. Tell us about some of the culture changes for you and how you had to adjust in order to become the person in which you are today.
Well, I'm not traditionally English. I think when you think of most people from England, we are reserved. I've never been reserved. So in that respect, I'm probably more American. As I've said before, Italy and I just didn't rub each other the right way. I think having a very confident nature and being in a country that is very ta-da, it was a good fit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're my vibe. These people are my... So I loved living here, and I do love living here. As I'm getting older, I'm feeling more of a pull back to England.
Wow.
So pre-COVID, I started going back to England for the summers. And then, of course, I missed 2 during COVID, and now I've started going back for the summers again. And that just seems to give me my fix of Britishness and the foods and the culture. So in that respect, I'm sort of dual. I've managed to find my happy place.
So you kind of touched on what sort of the passion you had for the aesthetics in terms of housing. So tell us, how does someone who's a model become a major player, a major developer?
I think, I never had any doubt that I could do it. Fear was my motivator. And I was very scared that first house because I knew it was a one and done. I knew that if I failed at that one, there was not going to be another opportunity.
How did you get started, though?
I had a loan, and it was a small loan. So I did a lot of the work myself. And fear was my motivator. And I don't know why I dreamt big.
Wow.
But I do encourage my son to dream big. It was never encouraged in me. So I think there's nature and nurture.
Yes.
I think we're born a certain way and then we're raised a certain way. I'm very happy to say that my nature won this with this one, And for me, it was always, I want to do more. I want to do better. I want to be the best. It was just this inner competitive thing that I have. It was not anyone saying, oh, can you do another? Can you do big? It was always inside of me. In fact, I had the opposite. I had people telling me, you can't do that. You can't do that. I was like, watch, because I can. I have reached the pinnacle. I don't believe there's another step up that I need to prove to myself. I don't feel like the next one's going to be 50 million. I just feel like this was my legend house where I can step back and go, wow. That's why at the beginning you said what you said, and I go, bloody hell, that was amazing.
Yeah, that's
You know,
fantastic.
so I don't feel the need, but I don't want to stop either. So now I'm always looking at projects. Always. I'm looking at one now in West Palm Beach. I'm looking at one, a manor house actually in Buckinghamshire in England.
Wow.
You know, in England, when you get to manor houses or castles or homes like that, stately homes, a lot of them are falling into disrepair because they're big and they're very expensive to run. And so I feel like there's something there where I could renovate a stately home and then have the professionals come in and tell me, how can this house make money? Is it weddings? Is it corporate events? What is it that these homes that are falling into disrepair could be brought back to life?
Yeah.
And how can they pay for themselves? So that's more of what I'm thinking for my next step in my career.
So going back to the $25 million Bel-Air home, I know you've had it. It was listed on, obviously, Selling Sunset and what's the other one in
$1 million
$1 million listing. So where is it now? Do you have a potential buyer?
So it went on the market, and you know, we talk about these shows, and they are filmed way in advance. A particularly $1 million listing, I think that was filmed for an entire year before it aired. They were quite slow at airing, and if you look at those shows, you'll see the house definitely wasn't complete when I shot $1 million listing. It was not even complete when I filmed Selling Sunset. So now when I do Selling Sunset, it will be a finished product, but it is on the market. It's been on the market about 45, well, not even, just over a month.
Wow.
And then we start looking at the market. Of course, we've just had the election, and now we've got Thanksgiving, and then we've got Christmas. It's an awful time to put anything on the market. And then, you know, you look at where the money's coming from. Obviously, Russia's not buying anything anymore. So then we look at China. China's really the leader of buying real estate in Los Angeles right now. So how do we get to those markets? How do we get this house into, you know, and I've just filmed a show that will air in China in January or February. So doing my best to get the word out in China.
Melanie, tell me, what is the criteria that you look for in a buyer? Obviously, the money aspect, I get that. But what is the criteria that you look for when you see someone that wants to buy a home of that magnitude?
Well, I have a funny story. If I can go back to my previous house that I built here, and then I'll answer your question, because it's a great question. But I'm not emotionally attached to these homes, but they are my babies in a way. So I know that this is my job, and I know I have to move on. So I had my last property with an open house, and as the open house came due, I realized it was Valentine's Day. There was the LA Marathon, and it was cloudy, and this was a city view property. So I called the agents. It was the first open house, and I said, cancel it. And then I went to stay in it for the weekend. And that's something that I do as a developer. I go and stay in the house so I can write down all the snag list for my GC. This is not working, this is broken, this needs... So I was there for the weekend, and I walked out of the garage. I looked like Sandra. I had a big old bag of rubbish and I've got my little doggy with me. And an older man, pulled it around a car. I thought he was going to visit his friend on the end of the cul-de-sac. And he said, wow, they've done a good job with this house. I remembered this house before they built this. And I said, oh, thank you. He said, oh, I drove up for the open house. There's an open house here today. And I said, no, it's been cancelled. And he went, oh, no, I drove over an hour. And he said, who are you? I said, I'm the developer and the designer. And he said, well, can you show me around? I said, well, I can. I know everything about this house. But the fireplaces won't be on, the lights won't be on, the fire won't be on. But I can definitely show you around. And So he came in through the garage, and we went through the ground floor. He said, I like everything you've done. Went up to the second floor. He said, this just keeps getting better and better. Got to the rooftop. He went, I'm going to make you an offer. Wow. And his offer was close in 2 weeks, no contingencies, full asking price. Plus, he said, my granddaughter is my agent, and because you've done such a great job of selling me this home, I'm only going to give her 50K, and I'm going to give you the rest of the commission. So he gave me another $147,000
Wow.
just for walking him through that
Wow.
house. And he did everything he said. It closed in 2 weeks, no contingencies, cash offer.
Wow.
Which brings me to your question, which was last week I had a potential buyer in the home. And the agents came, and I sort of stayed in the background until I couldn't anymore. And I was like, I'm going to have to start talking. I'm going to have to jut in here. And I then did the same thing. I walked them through everything, and I told them what I'd done purposely so that they could add their touches, so they could envisage living there. How many children do you have? Do they prefer baths? Do they prefer showers? Do you have live-in help? Do you need a space for them? And their feedback at the end, the next day, was loved the house, loved the developer, and the fact that she explained what she could do for our needs and wants, but we thought the road was a little bit busy. Which is a shame, because we've got 4 developments going on that road right now, including one next door. The road is very quiet, but obviously when you've got 4 developments, one next door, it feels busy in the day. But yes, I like to leave spaces and ideas so that the potential buyer could say, well, that, yes, I don't need a movie theatre, I do need nanny's quarters. Or, you know, I've even left the back garden quite sparse on purpose. So it's a blank canvas. And they can tell me, yes, I'd like a pergola, or I need an outdoor bar. And then I can do that. Because I think when you're buying a house, you want it to feel like your home. You want to put your own input into it as well. It's not just my creative vision.
Incredible. So I'm going to take you back, because I don't know if too many people know that you are actually a matchmaker. Can you talk to us about those days?
I can.
One of those eyebrows.
One of those moments. Well, I'll take you back to how it all started, which was back in the day. I knew Patty Stanger, and she approached me to be...
Bravo, right?
Yes. And she approached me to be one of the girls in her portfolio. And I said, thank you, but no thank you. I'm in a relationship. But we stayed in contact, and I came to Los Angeles. Again, here's another Valentine's Day story, but it was Valentine's Day, and I listened on the radio, and they were saying that in 5 years, the matchmaking business would be $1 billion business. I was living in Italy at the time, but I called Patty, and I said, would you be interested in doing a partnership where I take Western Europe? And that's what we did. And that's how I've always loved love. I've always loved matchmaking and date coaching. And I'm certified in androgynous semantic realignment, androgynous male-female semantic words, realignment, the brain. And it's just something that's always fascinated me. I'm a descendant of Dr. Pat Allen. She was amazing. I used to go to her events every Monday and just absorb everything that she would say, and then and she actually certified me in the Want Institute. And then I would use what I'd learned when I was date coaching my clients. And, this is before the swiping of the dating apps. I think the dating apps are a necessary evil in this particular world that we live in. However, I don't think they're actually doing us any favors at all, quite frankly. I think the insatiable swiping of anyone says or does one thing wrong doesn't matter. There's another 100 in your inbox. And so I don't think people take 2 feet in anymore and commit fully to a human being before they go, and then they're on with the next. So it's like I said, we're not going backwards, you know, but I would like people to commit more to an individual before they toss them away. It's terrible, isn't it? Terrible to say.
Is the psychology of dating intertwined to some degree with the psychology of selling homes?
Well, I think so. I mean, you know, you want someone to fall in love when they walk in that door. And we know that someone walks into a home and within 11 seconds know that they want it or not.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's a little bit like dating. You know that when you go out on a date, you know quite quickly if there's chemistry or not, whether there's an attraction, whether there's a connection. And I do feel like there's something in that when we're buying houses as well. And so, yes, when I'm designing, even back into the design phase, I'm thinking about energy. You know, I talk a lot about the energy of this house and how I've kept the flow of energy moving. You know, even if you look at the bathrooms, there is no let's walk in the bathroom door. The wall of door disappears, so that if you're laying in the bathtub and you want to not feel closed in, then there's this just lovely warmth about it. It feels like a hotel suite. And that was always my thought with this house when I was designing it was, I want you to feel, even though it's a big house, that you can always see people, unless you don't want to. But if you want to, you can see everybody, you can hear everybody, all the doors disappear. And if you have children, that's a lovely thing. And if you want to close yourself off, you can. And that was one of the big design elements that I wanted to achieve in such a big house.
Wow. So when you design a home like that, obviously $25 million, it's a luxury home. Do you give yourself a specific time frame? Like, are you hoping within a year that you're going to sell the house, or you just don't have a timeline for it?
Well, you always wish you get what you had on the last one, which is the first person in buys it. I thought I'd done it again, quite frankly. I had a lady come in prior to it finishing and going on the market, and she came once with 4 friends. They all loved it. Then she came a second time with her boyfriend. He loved it. And then she came back a third time for 2 hours, looked in every drawer, sat on every chair. And then she was going to come back a 4th time with her mother and her aunt. And that 4th time just didn't happen for whatever reason. You know, when you get into this ticket level of price, you know it's not going to sell overnight.
Yes.
And particularly in this market, it's a very, very shaky market right now. I do have belief that the first quarter of next year we'll see some turnaround. And there's just been a lot of things that have impacted the market. And we've got, as you know, interest rates. And we've also got the ULA tax, which is the mansion tax I've spoken about. So what happened was it just ground to a halt. You had homeowners who were empty nesters saying, well, I'm not going to sell my house. I have to pay $1 million in mansion tax. Might as well just stay put. You know, and so it was very... it just really was a very unfortunate time. It's not the worst time we've had, but I would say it's not a good time, you know. So,
if in the event there is a homeowner, you know the reasons why they say yes. Is there something in a structure of a home when they see your mansions or the things in which you do where they go, this isn't a fit for me? What are some of the things in which they say?
Yeah, I mean, if you like a modern home, mine ticks all the box. Of course, next door I have a developer building a Spanish, and they're literally next door. He'll be coming on the market at 23, so we're almost there at the same price, same road, next door. You're going to his house, and it's a completely different vibe. So you go, well, they're both new builds, they're both in the same area. But you go in that home and it's lovely. The finishes are lovely, but it's a completely different feeling. Yeah. And I do think there are definitely tick boxes that people go out with. Oh, I need a movie theatre. Oh, I need a pool. Oh, if you are looking for a house in that area, do you like a traditional or do you like a modern? You know, like I said, I have walls of glass. If you like a bit more privacy, you're not going to be drawn to my house. I really wanted to capture the elements and bring them in.
Indoor, outdoor.
Whereas next door has smaller windows, it's Spanish. If you prefer more of a cozy feel, you're going to go for that one. So, you know, I think, like I said, they all tick the same box. Move here to move here, pool. It's just, do you prefer modern or traditional? And sometimes it really just does come down to that feeling of...
As a developer, though, like you've done this, and so you've been on Selling Sunset, $1 million listing, are you then removed and you're just letting your agent sort of manage, or are you still very involved in the day-to-day?
Well, traditionally, the developer would leave it alone.
Yeah.
I can't. I cannot. I'm so...
Does the
There's
agent
no
like
way.
that, though?
I seem to have... my agents are very amiable and open to me being there, and I think they can see the value of me being there. I do think that if anyone can sell this house, it will be me, because they're never going to remember all the things that I've explained to them. They're never going to know every facet of that house. And as I said the other day, I sort of stepped in because I heard the agent saying, "Oh, look at the view," and saying all the right things, but not diving deep into the needs of the buyer. And that's really important. Like I said, do you need oh yes, we do need a live-in nanny, right? So, okay, let me show you this space where I can give her her own kitchenette, her own entrance, and she can have complete separate, quarters to where you are. They would never do that. So and they've known me a long time. I feel like they recognize, well, I actually just do it, honestly. I just say, what time, and I don't leave. I just stay.
How long did it take to develop this property?
It should have been a 3-year project. It turned into an 8-year project. A lot of unforeseen circumstances. We had the city took 3 years just to get the permits.
Wow.
Which is not as bad as Malibu. Wow. Malibu, you're looking 5-6 years just to get permits.
Wow.
Then we had COVID.
Yes.
And as much as we were told you're an essential worker, it didn't actually... That meant I could have my boys on, my crew, but it also meant that when we took our plans down, where normally we would have them stamped at the desk, during COVID, we had to put them in a room for 3 days with the door shut, because at the time we didn't know how you caught it. So there was... And then when you start thinking about all the things of the supply chain, everything was delayed. From HVAC covers, they were all stuck. And then I had a GC that just wasn't doing a good job, quite frankly. So it was just the perfect storm. I will say this, if this house had gone on the market 2 years ago, when it should have been finished, it would have sold very quickly. It was the hottest market we'd had in decades.
Tell me about the day of a life of a developer. Where does it all begin with you? You just see a set of land, you just say, this is it right here. What goes into the mindset of you deciding what you want to do with a space that you see?
Well, the first thing that I did on this particular one was go against the grain. I was doing an exchange 31, and you have to identify properties within a certain period of time. And it was, I am sometimes a bit silly, but I'm always pushing the envelope. And it was Friday afternoon. I had to submit the houses that I'd identified, and Friday afternoon, I was the third person who went to view the house, and they'd had 2 offers on it already, and it had only gone on the market that day. And I decided to put a lowball offer in, and I don't know why, but my terms were great. It was all cash, close in 2 weeks, no contingencies. I'd learned from my buyer. So now they came back and they said, well, you knew that we had 2 other offers. Your offer was the lowest. And I thought, why did I do that? Because I've got to have this house. And so what they did, my terms were the best. So they countered and I got it. I was staying in a hotel at the time, and I remember walking the site. It wasn't even a job site. I remember walking the property and saying to my agent at the time and my GC, yeah, this is great. And I was already percolating. And they both told me, you cannot build what you built up Sunset Plaza. You cannot build modern here. Has to be traditional, has to be Spanish or Tuscan. This is the canyon, this is Bel-Air. And I said, okay. And then I went to my hotel room and got the pad and started sketching what is now there. It literally was a sketch immediately. And what I sketched was what started that build.
Wow.
But to answer your question, my life as a developer, once I've designed the house and we're on the job site, it's very demanding. I am literally the only girl there. You've probably heard me say before, there's a level of disrespect that I... it's unfortunate, but it's very true that there's just this massive level of disrespect from men. And I always say, I hate to say this, but if I don't say it, then I'm not being truthful.
Right, I was
Of course.
And I want to be truthful because I do think, I also want to encourage women to come into this business because it is a lot of fun. The design and the picking of the finishes is all great fun. There's just that chunk in the middle where you're having to work with the trades and the crew. I have a brilliant team now, and they do respect me, and they do. We have great harmony, and it's a very respectful relationship. But I just would say to any woman who wants to come into this industry that you've really got to have balls bigger than any man.
Wow.
No, that makes a lot
Really?
of sense. That makes sense.
I always say I've got the biggest ball on this job site, so if you want to mess with me, let's go. Because you have to. It shouldn't be like that, but that's the reality.
No, it
At
makes
least it's
perfect
my
sense.
reality.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. It makes sense.
So now that very soon this house is going to be sold.
I hope so.
And what's next for you? Do you work it, are you thinking about the next project in tandem, or do you just want to get this completed before starting your next?
Well, I'm taking a bit of a rest because I'm absolutely knackered. And if you're British, you know what that means. I'm very tired. So I'm taking a rest as far as I'm not building right now, but I am, I'm at the house fixing things all the time. I'm just bidding 2 jobs right now. One is for a famous client and one's for a very rich client. Both great. So I'd be happy if I get those jobs.
There you go.
So I'd be very happy. So I'm in the midst of bidding one actively, and then going to have a meeting to bid the other one, which would be great. Takes the pressure off of me, means that I'm not borrowing 8 figures of loans, and so that will be a very refreshing change for me. And like I said, I have located this gorgeous manor house in Buckinghamshire that I would like to renovate for myself, and I think that would be a beautiful home.
So you've been to many different parts of the world and different countries. Tell me, in your mind, is being here in the United States and seeing the way in which homes are built here, are they similar? Are they different? Are they all structured? Is there something different that you see in each place in which you've lived in Italy and in
Yes,
different places?
In England, we build with bricks and mortar. In Italy, there's not a lot of new building, at least in the tiny town that I lived in. It was a very traditional old town, not a lot of new builds at all, very traditional. In America, you build, I live in LA, you build with wood. And I remember when I first came to America, and I'd been renovating houses, and I'd done loads of houses in England. And I remember watching a house being built here going, what's going on?
Yeah.
I couldn't understand how a wood, but then as I learned, it's for earthquakes. You need the house to move. And then it made complete sense. But for someone coming from England, it was such a culture shock, going back to cultures. It was just like, what? I can't, Now, of course, I know how you build here.
Besides all, you're very active. Tell us about your involvement with the Royal St. George.
Oh, yes. Well, Sandro Minetti, a previous guest of yours, introduced...
On a BBC.
Oh, yes.
The royal family correspondent for the royal family.
Yes.
And CNN contributor.
Yeah. Well, that was my connection with the Royal Society, because he recognized, he's on the board, and he recognized that I had done actually decades of volunteer hospice care. Wow. My mother took me in as a little girl. She was also a volunteer hospice carer, and my first job was, we call it a tuck shop in England, but it was a little corner where I would sell cups of tea and chocolate bars to the family of the patients. And that was my first job as a little girl. And then when I turned 16, I was on the wards serving the patients tea. And then when I moved to America, it's different again. You keep looking at the differences between England and America. In America, you got assigned a patient until they're passing, which was usually 3 months or less. Yeah. And so he just said, that's really incredible that you've done that, and I think you should be recognized for it, which is a very sweet thing and nothing that I had ever considered. But at the same time, it brought attention to, again, other people going, oh, maybe that's something I could do and help in that way.
To some degree, though, in speaking of hospice, it also shows a sense of your humanity, of not just in the housing aspect, because you care there, but the care in which you have for people who are in need. Talk a little bit about the fact that the two somehow or another gel together.
I think when we think about humanity, and if you look at the world today, we're in a bit of a pickle. And I think if we all just led, Sandra and I talk about kindness, and Eve has been to one of my British breakfasts, and that was just, again, born out of, wait, nobody's going out after COVID.
Yes.
We've lost all of our friends. Our bubble of 5 is still my only friend bubble now, and my other friends just disappeared. And so I created that event to just bring people together and to share stories and to support each other and network and socialize, and things that I thought had gone away during COVID and never fully came back. And I think that's what this is. It's about looking out for each other and supporting each other, whatever that is, whether it's a volunteer work or whether it's thinking, how can I make someone's house feel like a home so that they feel loved in it and that they feel like there's care, being put into it, into every detail. She cared about this. I always used to say to my GC, I don't want to have any unforgotten room. Even my laundry room, which is in the basement, is wallpapered and mirrored, and I don't want any room to not feel loved.
Wow.
So that every space you walked into, you're like, oh, there's some care being given to this.
Wow, so you've got such a wonderful son, 9-year-old, and he is so fantastic and smart.
Thank you.
Tell us, how do you guys, Thanksgiving is around the corner. I don't know when this is going to air, but obviously whenever it airs, how do you celebrate Thanksgiving with him?
I have booked, we talked about the King's Head. That's where we hold the British breakfast. So we're all piling back there.
Nice.
There's 12 of us going. The last time I did that with him was a couple of years ago, and actually Sandro was there for that. And Sandro and my nanny at the time both had fish and chips for their Thanksgiving. For Thanksgiving, they both had fish and chips.
So you didn't do the traditional.
But I and Gio we had the traditional. So what's really special about this Thanksgiving is a friend of mine just asked if she wants to get married. So I asked Sandro to do it, to officiate it. So they're getting married at the home we've just been speaking of. So it'd be really special.
On Thanksgiving Day.
On Thanksgiving Day.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think I just saw Roger pointing to me that we're at the 3-minute mark. It went by so quickly.
I know.
I'm
a talker. I don't know what to say.
So the last question is, if you were to have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, you could have fed me that question before I arrived. Wow. It's funny. Before I left, I said to my nanny, I never ask anyone to send me any questions. I always want to just go raw. I don't want to practice. I don't want to see what you're going to ask me. But this one, I would have liked a little bit of a heads up. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go for dead. And I'm going to say Princess Diana. I'm a true royalist. And I would have just liked to have a quick cup of tea and a scone with her.
Yeah,
have a little chat with her.
Dinner
you said. Well, then I'll do the whole 4 courses. And really,
that's a good one. Oh my goodness, this has been such an amazing interview. I mean,
it was, but I think the fact that she said she'll do all 4 courses is even better. Meet me at the King's Head. That's one of my favorite places for the fish and chips.
Yes,
I love that place.
Oh, yes.
That's a wonderful place. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. I'm so glad you got to come here and talk with us, and looking forward to seeing all the wonderful things. And I'm sure the house is going to sell next quarter, but I'm going to be on the lookout.
We're partying if it does.
It will be. I'm going to watch you on Selling Sunset. Anything else that you would like to plug, that you'd like our listeners to know?
No, just check me out on Insta, melaniemarlo.design. And that's it. See me there.
Wow.
Keep up with me.
Oh my goodness, this has been fantastic.
I loved it.
Melanie, thank you so much for coming. Tyrone, thank you so much for hosting. Roger, thank you so much for producing. Jamie over there, thank you. Thanks everyone for listening. Please make sure you watch this episode on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel, or you could listen to us on your favorite podcast. Again, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you so much, Melanie, for coming by and talking to us. Tyrone, what an honor it's been having you here. Roger, thank you. Jamie, thank you. See you soon.